The Galactic Council chamber was a silent place. The air was still. The many species who governed this part of the galaxy did not need to breathe the same gases. But they all understood the feeling of a decision being made. The vote on the annexation of planet TK-771, known locally as Earth, was nearly complete. Counselor Vel, a Kelfari with skin like smooth gray stone, watched the holographic display. It showed a blue and white world. "I must again advise caution." Vel's voice was a low rumble. "This world is an anomaly. Its surface is covered in complex, repeating structures. Its near orbit is a junkyard of primitive satellites and debris, more dense than any civilized system. Their energy signatures are frenetic, chaotic, bleeding into space with no apparent purpose. They are pre-FTL, yes, but they are not simple." Commander Crix of the Thraxian hegemony stood on the other side of the chamber. His chitinous plates clicked together in a dismissive gesture. "Chaos is a sign of weakness, Counselor. Look at their own history streams. They are a fractured species. They have hundreds of political divisions. They engage in constant, small-scale conflicts among themselves. They are divided. They are weak. Their technology is a patchwork of clumsy concepts. A standard pacification will be concluded within one of their planetary rotations. Their resources, while primitive, are abundant." The other council members listened. Many saw the logic. The Thraxian hegemony had a perfect record of pacifications. Their doctrine was proven. Shock, overwhelming force, a clear demand for surrender. Pre-FTL species always crumpled. Earth seemed no different. A messy, loud, divided world. "Their division is what worries me," Vel insisted. "There is no single leader to surrender. No central logic to predict. And that satellite field, it speaks of a species that builds and builds without cleaning up its mess. That is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of relentless, almost frantic activity." "Their activity will cease when our warships appear in their sky," Crix said confidently. The vote was called. The glowing orbs of light floated in the air. The majority voted for annexation. It was, the record would later show, a routine decision. Vel's was one of the few votes against. As the chamber emptied, the old Kelfari looked once more at the hologram of the blue planet. That feeling, the one his species called deep stone unease, settled in his core. This was not right. The order was given. The Thraxian armada, a fleet of sleek, angular ships the color of bruised metal, slipped into faster-than-light travel. Their destination, a small, unremarkable star system, on a spiral arm of the galaxy dot in a small apartment in Seoul. Jinwoo Park was losing a game. Or he was about to win. His fingers danced across the keyboard, his eyes fixed on the screen where his character, a fantasy warrior, was battling a large monster. The chat window next to the game was a blur of messages from viewers. Jinwoo was a former professional gamer. Now, he worked a quiet job as a logistics analyst. But his mind still worked in the same way, finding patterns, predicting movements, executing strategies under pressure. "Come on, one more hit," he muttered. His hand moved for a final, powerful attack. The screen went black. Not just his game monitor. Every screen in his apartment. His phone, his tablet, the smart panel on his wall. All of them died for a single. Silent second. Then they all lit up at once. A harsh, angular symbol appeared. One that was not of Earth. A voice boomed from every speaker, translated into Korean by some cold, perfect algorithm. "People of Earth, we are the Thraxian hegemony. Your world is now a protectorate of the Galactic Council. You will lay down your arms. Your global network of communications will cease. Your leaders will present themselves for terms of surrender. You have one of your hours to comply. Resistance is illogical. It will be met with total destruction. The message repeated. In English, in Mandarin, in Spanish, in Hindi, in Arabic. Across the planet, on every screen, every radio, every public display, Jingwu sat back in his chair. His heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was the same adrenaline rush he felt at the start of a major tournament. A new game. A very, very high-stakes game. He looked at the frozen image on his screen. The alien symbol. He minimized the message. Behind it, his game was still running, his character standing idle. He looked at the monster's attack pattern, still visible in his mind. All enemies had a pattern. You just had to find it. He opened a new window, not to a news site, but to a secure chat server he used with his old gaming team. The channel was already exploding. Did you see that? What is happening? Is this real? Jingwu typed quickly. Check secondary networks. Military bands. Emergency channels. Don't watch the news. Listen to the noise. He was not a soldier, but he knew how to process chaotic data. He began pulling up maps, traffic feeds, power grid statuses. He was looking for the pattern in the planet's response. Across the city, Haijin Li was on the roof of a new office building, inspecting some final welding work. She was a structural engineer. She liked things that made sense. Forces, weights, tensions. The world, to her, was a puzzle of physics waiting to be solved correctly. Her radio, tuned to a music station, crackled and went silent before the alien message played. She listened, her face calm. The foreman next to her began to panic. Aliens, we have to go. We have to hide. Haijin looked up. High in the afternoon sky, she could see them. Dark shapes, blocking the sun. Thraxian warships, hanging in low orbit like cold, dead stones. She estimated their size. She looked at the building she was standing on. She looked at the city around her, a forest of steel and concrete and glass. They want our surrender, the foreman stammered. They are in low orbit, Haijin said, her voice quiet and analytical. Their primary ships are too large to enter the atmosphere without causing massive shock waves. They will need to send down smaller shuttles. Landing craft. She turned and walked towards the roof access door. They will likely target symbolic centers of power. Open areas for mass landings. Where are you going? The foreman yelled. To my office, Haijin said. I have the city's structural and civil engineering blueprints. If they land here, we need to know which streets can handle the weight, which bridges are liabilities, and which buildings are not as strong as they look. She was not thinking about fighting them head on. She was thinking about the battlefield itself. How to change it in a network operations center that was really just a basement room filled with humming computers. Teeman Kim was in his element. His official job was a network technician for a local internet provider. His unofficial passion was the global digital infrastructure. He knew how data flowed around the planet, like other people knew the streets of their neighborhood. When the message hit, every alarm on his wall-sized monitor array went off at once. Then, just as suddenly, they all went silent. The global internet was being suppressed. A blanket of Thraxian signal jamming falling over the planet. But Teeman smiled a little. Amateurs, he whispered. Earth's network was not a single, clean system. It was a messy, organic, resilient tangle. It was built on top of old systems, wired through oceans, shot into space on satellites, and bounced through millions of local networks. The Thraxians were blocking the main highways, but the back roads, the dirt paths, the secret tunnels were already lighting up. He switched views. He saw activity on old military packet radio networks, on ham radio bands, on localized mesh networks that people used in remote villages. on the dedicated cables that connected financial trading hubs. A planet-wide, encrypted, chaotic conversation was beginning. It wasn't panic. It was a system rebooting in a different mode. Tiemann had a small army of drones at his apartment. He started typing commands. If their sensors were looking down, maybe a few thousand small, cheap drones could give them something else to look at. At the United Nations complex, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Diplomats shouted, security teams scrambled. Una Choi moved through the crowd with a focused calm. She was a translator and diplomatic aide. Her mind worked in languages and meanings, in the subtle differences between a threat and a warning, between pride and bluster. She watched the main screen as world leaders, one by one, tried to respond. Defiance, fear, confusion. She listened to the Thraxian message again, playing on a loop on a secondary monitor. She listened not just to the words, but to the tone, the cadence. It was a standard script. It was bored. It was arrogant. It expected obedience. Una sat down at her terminal, which was still functioning on an internal network. She began to compile everything. The video of the ships. The audio of the message. She started a file. She labeled it not invasion, but first contact transcript, Thraxian hegemony. She began noting her observations. Message assumes unified planetary hierarchy. Message does not offer negotiation, only ultimatum. Speaker uses repetitive, simplistic phrasing. Suggests a rigid, doctrinal approach to conflict. She knew that to understand an enemy, you had to understand how they spoke. And these beings spoke like a hammer. To them, every problem was a nail. She had a feeling Earth was not a nail. It was something else entirely. She began cross-referencing the little data they had with cultural databases, looking for any clue, any precedent. Her work was quiet, in the corner of the roaring room, but it was perhaps the most important work being done there. She was building a translation guide not just for their words, but for tea. The Thraxian landing shuttles, shaped like black arrowheads, screamed through the atmosphere. They followed the doctrine. They targeted the symbolic centers of human power, the great capitals, the major ports, the military bases clearly visible from orbit. Commander Crix watched the descent on his main viewer. It was a textbook operation. Beautiful in its precision. In Seoul, the shuttles aimed for the vast, open plaza before the old palace, a perfect landing zone. The people below scattered, a predictable panic. Crix felt a surge of satisfaction. This was the moment when a primitive species looked up and understood its place. On the ground, Shinwoo Park was not looking at the sky. He was looking at his screens. He had 6 different monitors active. One showed a live feed from a news helicopter that was still bravely flying. Another showed a map of the city's traffic cameras, most of which were still online. A third was a scrolling chaos of text from the gaming chat server, now repurposed. People were reporting sightings, movements, all in the quick, abbreviated language of gamers. Shuttle. Group Alpha descending over Gwanghwamun, someone typed. Beta. Group vectoring toward the Yongzhen. Garrison. Single scoutcraft hovering near the Harrison. Digital Media City. Jinwoo's fingers flew. He began marking the shuttle paths on his map. They were not random. They moved in formation. They held specific altitudes. They prioritized open ground. It was a pattern. A rigid one. He saw it instantly, the way he used to see the attack patterns of a final boss monster. They were predictable. He typed into the main chat, his message highlighted for the whole channel. They are using standard flanking patterns from a central drop zone. They avoid tight urban canyons. Their sensors might be weak on vertical clutter. Do not meet them in the open. Let them land, then close the doors. He had no authority. He was a former gamer in his apartment. But in the chaos, a clear idea spread. Someone, somewhere, with the power to act, heard the logic. Hai-Jin Lee was in the city's emergency operations bunker, not as a commander, but as a consultant. The military officers were arguing about troop deployments. Hai-Jin was studying the structural schematics of the city on a large tablet. Where will they land? A colonel asked her, his voice tight. Here, here, and most likely here, Hai-Jin said, pointing to 3 large plazas on the map. Their craft are heavy. They need firm, flat ground with wide approaches. They will avoid areas with dense underground infrastructure they cannot scan. What good does that do us? The colonel snapped. Hai-Jin zoomed in on the map near Guangwaman. The main drainage culvert for this plaza runs beneath it. It is old. The support beams here, she tapped the screen, are steel, but they were rated for a different weight load 70 years ago. She looked up, her eyes calm. If we were to, for example, remotely trigger the charges from the construction site on Zhongno Avenue to collapse that tunnel, the ground above would become unstable. Not enough to swallow buildings. Just enough to become sticky, like thick mud. It would not destroy a landing craft. It would trap it. The room went quiet. They were thinking about missiles and guns. She was thinking about the ground itself. A young captain nodded slowly. We can do that. We have the demolition charges already in place for the Zhongno project. Then do not shoot the shuttle, Hai-Jin said softly. Let it land, and then change the ground beneath it. Teeman Kim was in his basement, but his mind was in the sky. The Thraxian jamming had shut down the primary internet, but his drones connected on a special local frequency. He had 500 of them, small commercial drones used for light shows and photography. He launched them all from rooftops across the district. On his main screen, he saw the view from 100 cameras at once. The Thraxian shuttles were like dark gods descending. But as they came lower, Teeman sent his swarm dot. It was not an attack. The drones were made of plastic and cheap metal. They carried no weapons. They flew in a great cloud toward the landing shuttles. They did not crash into them. They simply flew around them in a dizzying, chaotic swarm, getting as close as they dared. On the bridge of the Conqueror's Will, Commander Crix frowned. What is that? Insect life? Sensor analysis indicates primitive aerial drones, Commander, the officer reported. Millions of them. They are causing massive interference. Visual and thermal sensors are compromised. The landing zones are covered in a shifting cloud of small signatures. We cannot get clear targeting data. Burn them out with point defense lasers. Crix ordered, the shuttles fired. Bright lances of energy shot from them, vaporizing dozens of drones with each blast. But for every one destroyed, 10 more seemed to take its place. And the drones were cheap. The lasers were not. The shuttles were wasting energy and time, trying to clear a sky that only grew more cluttered with buzzing, meaningless confusion. Teeman watched one of his drone feeds go black. He shrugged and directed another 10 to fill the gap. He was not fighting the Thraxians. He was spamming them, overloading their systems with useless data. He was giving the people on the ground time. The first Thraxian shuttle touched down in the Guangwaman Plaza with a heavy thud. The ramp lowered. A squad of Thraxian warriors marched out. They were tall, clad in dark armor, carrying energy rifles that hummed with power. They moved in perfect unison, covering the angles, a model of disciplined invasion. They expected to see ranks of human soldiers, or a delegation of leaders, come to surrender. They saw empty plaza littered with abandoned belongings. They saw the windows of the tall buildings around them, all dark. They heard only the wind and the distant buzz of drones. The squad leader hissed in confusion. This was not doctrine. Then the ground groaned not. It was a low, deep sound. The Thraxians looked down. The polished stones of the plaza shifted. Cracks appeared. Not huge, catastrophic fissures, but a web of them. The landing shuttle, a massive weight on its tripod legs, tilted suddenly. One leg sank a meter into the ground. The hull groaned in protest. It was stuck. Before the squad could react, things began to fall from the buildings. Not bombs, not missiles. A rain of heavy metal construction debris, bricks, and pieces of old machinery dropped from great heights. It was not accurate. It was not meant to be. A chunk of concrete smashed into a Thraxian warrior, knocking him down. His shield flickered. The armor was strong, but the impact was brutal and simple. From the subway tunnels, from the sewer grates, small wheeled robots rolled out. They were bomb disposal robots, delivery robots, modified toy cars. Some had spray paint cans attached. They zipped around the Thraxians' feet, spraying thick, obscuring paint on their visors and sensor pods. Others simply crashed into their legs, tangling them up. It was undignified. It was infuriating. The Thraxians fired their energy rifles. Bright bolts shattered a robot, scorched a wall. But there was no real enemy to shoot. Just a city that seemed to be falling apart around them in the most annoying way possible. On his command ship, Commander Crix received the reports. They were not reports of battle. They were reports of problems. Landing Zone Alpha. Primary shuttle is mired in unstable substrate. Hostile activity is low-tech harassment. No organized military resistance. Landing Zone Beta. Swarm of small aerial vehicles is blocking all scans. We have taken control of the target building, but the local data network is a labyrinth of dead ends and corrupted files. Landing Zone Gamma. Our warriors are reporting a highly corrosive atmosphere. Their armor seals are degrading at an unexpected rate. Local plant life emits acidic compounds. The very air seems damaging. Crix slammed a clawed fist on the console. This is not resistance. This is nonsense. Where is their army? Their armies appear to be holding position at a distance, Commander, his tactical officer said, sounding puzzled. They are not engaging. The interference is coming from the civilian infrastructure and the environment itself. Una Choi, in the UN bunker, was listening. The Thraxians, in their frustration, had begun broadcasting more on their command channels. They were not encrypted as well as they should be. They were arrogant. Una, with her linguistic mind, had begun to piece together their communications. She listened to the clipped, angry exchanges. She heard words like substandard terrain, biological, irritants, and systemic contamination. She heard a junior officer complain about the illogical architecture that blocked lines of sight. She compiled a new report. She did not send it to the generals first. She sent it to the open channels that people like Timin and Jinwu were using. Thraxian morale note, she typed. They are confused by non-standard resistance. They use words like unclean and disorderly to describe our tactics. Their commander is demanding a proper battle. They are frustrated. This is a cultural weakness. They value order and doctrine above all. They do not know how to process chaos. In his apartment, Jinwu read Yuna's words. A slow smile spread across his face. He understood. The enemy was playing a different game, a strict rule-based game. Earth was not playing that game at all. It was time to break the rules completely. He opened a new window. He typed a message to the whole network, an idea forming. Stop trying to hurt their armor. It's too strong. Target their logistics. Their shuttles need fuel, energy, coolant. Their soldiers need clear paths and sensor data. Take that away. Be annoying. Be a problem they cannot solve with a laser. The message echoed across the planet through 1,000. Commander Crix's frustration was a burning thing in his chest. His perfect invasion was bogged down in a planet-wide swamp of petty annoyances. He had trained for war, for glorious battles against enemy fleets. He was not prepared for a world that fought back with traffic jams, bad smells, and corrupted data. He made a decision. A show of force. Doctrine said to escalate against non-compliance. If they would not respect the ground forces, they would respect orbital fire. Target the symbols of their military power. He ordered from the bridge of the Conqueror's will, the large installations, the shipyards, the command centers. Burn their pride from orbit. The great ship hummed with power. Targeting lasers painted the surface. In a bunker in Virginia, a Pentagon satellite feed showed the energy buildup. Warnings flashed. But the response was not what Crix expected. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a command center built for a different kind of war, a technician saw the readings. Instead of scrambling missile defenses, she sent a priority signal through a hardened landline. It was a simple command, repeated at key nodes across the planet. It was not a military code. It was a power grid management command, all across Earth. In a coordinated flicker, major power plants and substations performed a controlled shutdown. For a few seconds, whole continents went dark. Then, the systems rebooted in a different mode. They rerouted power along secondary, older grids. They created a surge, a massive, deliberate pulse of electromagnetic energy directed not upwards, but outwards across the planet's surface. The Thraxian targeting sensors, focused on the bright, hot signatures of human power plants and military bases, suddenly went blind. The pulse was a wall of static. It was like trying to see a candle through a blizzard. The orbital strike beams fired, but their targeting was confused. One bolt struck an empty field in Nebraska, vaporizing dirt and corn. Another hit a decommissioned cargo ship in a Singapore scrapyard, turning it into molten slag. They missed every primary target. On the ground, the temporary blackout was a signal. It was time for the next phase. Jing Wu watched the reports stream in. The orbital strikes had failed. His theory was correct. The Thraxians relied on clean, clear data. Earth was giving them noise. He focused on a new pattern, the enemy's supply lines. The shuttles needed to return to their motherships for power and ammunition. They followed specific flight paths back to orbit, like predictable commuters. He called up a map of Seoul's airspace, overlaid with drone sightings from Tiananmen's network. He saw the corridors the shuttles used. He noticed they avoided areas with tall, dense clusters of skyscrapers. Their aversion to vertical clutter was a weakness. He typed a quick message to a civil engineering chat room that was now coordinating with Haijin's people. Can we make more clutter? Temporary structures, smoke, reflective chaff in the air corridors they use for ascent. The answer came back fast. Construction cranes. We can swing them into position. We have metallic debris from the first strikes. We can use industrial fans to create dust clouds thick with metal fragments. It will look like a storm on their sensors. It was not a weapon. It was a curtain. A curtain to hide behind and to make the enemy afraid of what they might fly into. Haijin was no longer just looking at the ground. She was looking at everything the Thraxians touched. Reports came in from trapped landing parties. Their advanced materials were failing. Their joint seals were cracking. Their energy rifle barrels were corroding. A chemist from a university, hiding in a lab, sent her analysis. It's our atmosphere, the message read. It's not just oxygen and nitrogen. It's a cocktail of trace elements and compounds from millions of years of life and industry. Their alloy has a vulnerability to a specific combination of water vapor, sodium chloride from our oceans, and nitrous oxides from vehicle exhaust. It's like a slow-acting acid to them. Their own planet must be chemically bland. Haijin understood. Earth itself was fighting. She sent out a new directive to emergency teams. Do not attack the soldiers. Attack what they stand on. Where they are stuck, flood the area with salt water if you can. Use industrial exhaust fumes. If they have taken a building, cut the climate control and let the outside air in. Our air is our ally. In London, a Thraxian squad holding a bridge found the Thames River surging over its banks in a controlled release from upstream locks, not to drown them, but to spray them with a mist of brackish, polluted water. Their armor systems hissed with corrosion alerts. Teenan's war was in the invisible world. The Thraxian communications were a fortress, but every fortress had a waste pipe. He found it in the low-level maintenance signals between their shuttles and ships. It was a simple automated system, sending performance data. It was not well guarded, because it was not considered important. He couldn't break the encryption. So he didn't. He copied it. He made 1 million copies of a single boring data packet about a coolant pump status. Then, using every hijacked satellite dish and internet router he could access, he blasted that same packet at the Thraxian receivers. Over and over and over, that it was the digital version of throwing sand into a machine's gears. The Thraxian comm system, designed for clear battlefield signals, began to choke. It was trying to process the same meaningless message 1 billion times. Real orders were delayed, lost in the noise. Shuttle pilots received conflicting data. A message to retreat would arrive after a message to advance, causing confusion and collisions in the crowded orbital paths. He then unleashed his masterpiece, the meme. He and a network of digital artists took the Thraxian commander's translated surrender demand and edited it. They set the grim alien voice to cheerful human music. They made the Thraxian soldiers in captured footage dance ridiculously. They created short, looping videos that highlighted their failures, the stuck shuttle, the warriors being pelted with trash dot. These were not broadcast for humans. Tiemann found the public entertainment frequencies the Thraxians used for their own troops. He hacked into a low-power relay on one of their own landed shuttles. He flooded their channels with it, thought at first it was just interference. Then the Thraxian soldiers began to see it. Their own commander's voice turned into a joke. Their own image made foolish. It was psychological warfare, delivered in a language they understood, video and sound. It was deeply, profoundly disrespectful. And it was demoralizing. Yuna Choi listened to the Thraxian command channels deteriorate. The crisp, arrogant tones were gone. Now there was static, confusion, and a new sound, fear. The low-level soldiers were reporting things that sounded like superstition. The very plants here sting us. The water seeks to dissolve us. The air whispers with data noise. It clouds the mind. The structures are illogical. They hide threats in their collapse. She compiled her most important report yet. She titled it Conceptual Breakdown. She wrote, "The Thraxian mindset is based on control and order. They cannot process an enemy that is also the environment. They are not losing a battle. They are failing an environmental stress test. Their technology is superior, but it is not adaptable. They see our chaos as a weakness. We must show them it is our ecosystem. It is our strength." She sent this report not just to human leaders, but also used Teenan's noisy data streams as a carrier. She buried her report in the middle of the billion coolant pump messages. She knew the Thraxians would eventually filter it out and read it. She wanted them to. Understanding could be a weapon, too. If they realized what they were truly fighting, they might break. Commander Crix stood on his bridge, surrounded by failure. The orbital strikes were useless. The ground forces were trapped, corroding, and confused. The comms were a mess of childish mockery and static. His ships were wasting power trying to see through a planetary haze of deliberate interference. A new report flashed. It was from the head of his science team. The being's face on the screen was pale with shock. "Commander, we have analyzed the biological samples. This planet is a death world. Its life is based on constant conflict and adaptation. Every microbe, every plant, every insect is in a total war for survival. Their civilization is just a layer on top of that. Their history, it is one long, unbroken chronicle of global wars, plagues, and recoveries. They are used to catastrophe. To them, our invasion is just Tuesday." Crix felt the cold truth sink in. They had not invaded a planet. They had jumped into an active chemical and biological warfare lab. The humans were not the only enemy. The dirt was the enemy. The air was the enemy. The water was the enemy. And the humans were the terrifying custodians of it all. He looked at the blue and white marble below. It no longer looked primitive. It looked patient. It looked hungry. For the first time, Commander Crix felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of his ship. He had come for a conquest. He was now fighting for the survival of his fleet. The command deck of the Conqueror's will was no longer a place of confident noise. It was a tomb of quiet dread. Commander Crix stared at the holographic tactical display, but it was a map of his own failure. The neat red icons of his invasion force were now scattered and blinking with distress codes. Stranded, contaminated, comes dark. Environmental hazard. He listened to the last report from the surface. A squad leader, his voice ragged with static and something else panic, was describing his position. The structures, they are not inert. They shift. The ground swallowed 2 of our walkers. The small flying things are everywhere, and they paint our visors so we cannot see. The air burns our lungs. Commander, we must withdraw. This is not a war. This is a digestion. The transmission cut off. Crix turned away. His carapace felt tight. He had followed the doctrine perfectly. The doctrine was wrong. The Council's vote was wrong. This planet was a trap, smiling with blue oceans and white clouds. "Open a channel to the Galactic Council," Crix said, the words ash in his mouth. "Priority Alpha, request. Emergency session." Across the galaxy, the emergency signal pulsed through subspace. In the silent, grand chamber, the representatives of 100 species materialized as holograms, their forms flickering with concern. An Alpha priority call from an invasion fleet was unheard of. It meant catastrophe. Counselor Vel of the Calthari was already there, his stone-like face impassive, but his inner sense of deep stone unease was now a screaming chorus. He had warned them. The central display lit up with the face of Commander Crix. The Thraxian looked diminished. His pride was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out urgency. "Counselors, the pacification of planet TK-771 is not viable. I repeat, not viable. We are facing total mission failure." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Thraxian hegemony did not admit failure. "What is the nature of the resistance?" asked the shrill ambassador, a being of gentle light. "Have they unveiled a hidden fleet? A planetary shield?" Crix's mandibles clicked, a sign of profound distress. "No, there is no singular resistance. The enemy is the planet itself. Its technology is primitive, but used with a malicious creativity. They do not confront us. They inconvenience us to death." He began to play the compiled data. The Council watched in stunned silence. They saw the shuttles, symbols of Thraxian power, stuck in suddenly soft ground like insects in sap. They saw the warrior legions, trained for glorious charges, being pelted with construction debris and harassed by buzzing drones. They saw the corrosion reports, their advanced alloys pitted and weakened by Earth's bland atmosphere. They heard the audio clips of their own surrender ultimatum, twisted into a catchy, mocking tune that now played on Thraxian troop frequencies. Then, Vel's own science team, which he had quietly tasked with analyzing the data stream, presented their findings. A Kelthari scientist, her voice calm and grave, spoke. Counselors, we have assessed the planetary history and biosphere. TK-771 is a Class 12 death world. Its dominant species, Homo sapiens, did not tame their world. They evolved with it through a filter of constant, extreme competition. Their entire history is a litany of global conflicts, near extinctions, and rapid technological adaptation driven by warfare against themselves and their own environment. Their concept of peace is a temporary pause to prepare for the next catastrophe. An external threat does not unite them against a common enemy. It simply gives their entire chaotic, combative ecosystem a new focal point. The chamber was utterly silent. The scientist continued. Their digital networks are not for communication alone. They are a distributed nervous system built for resilience. Sever one part, and another takes over. Their infrastructure is both fragile and deeply redundant. Destroy a power plant, and 1,000 smaller sources activate. They have turned their own pollution and industrial decay into a defensive haze. Invading TK-771 is not a military action. It is attempting to perform surgery on a creature that is made of knives, acid, and adaptive viruses. The Thraxians are not being defeated. They are being metabolized. Counselor Vel finally spoke. His low rumble filled the quiet. Commander Crix, what are your losses? Crix looked down. 30% of ground forces combat ineffective due to environmental degradation. Another 40% immobilized or isolated. Vehicle losses exceed 60%, primarily to terrain and corrosive factors. Energy weapon efficacy has dropped by 70% due to atmospheric interference and targeting obstruction. Morale, he hesitated, is non-existent. The troops believe the planet itself is alive and hates them. A Thraxian admitting to low morale was more shocking than the casualty reports. The shrill ambassador glimmered with distress. You are saying we have sent a force to its doom? For a vote based on incomplete data? The data was not incomplete, Vel said firmly. It was misinterpreted. We saw their divisions and called it weakness. It is their survival strategy. We saw their dense satellites and called it clutter. It is a neural net. We saw their pollution and called it primitiveness. It is a chemical shield. We did not invade a civilization. We invaded a planetary-scale immune response. The head of the council, an ancient being of crystalline form, pulsed with light. The implications are severe. We have not only endangered a sentient species, but we have also exposed the Thraxian hegemony, and, by extension, this council, to a force we fundamentally do not comprehend. This must end. A vote was called. It was not like the first one. This time, there was no debate, no ambition. It was a vote of sheer, galactic self-preservation. The decision was unanimous and swift. Commander Crix, the crystal speaker intoned. The Galactic Council hereby revokes the annexation order for planet TK-771, designated Earth. You are ordered to cease all hostilities immediately. A full withdrawal is mandated. Counselor Vel will take a diplomatic vessel to the system. His task is to open communications with the dominant species and apologize. We must contain this incident before the planet decides to follow you home. The words were a final humiliation for Crix, but also a relief. He had permission to flee. Understood, Council. The Conqueror's will begin withdrawal protocols. The channel closed. In the council chamber, the holograms lingered for a moment, a silent gathering of shocked minds. The shrill ambassador turned to Vel. How do you apologize to a planet? To a species that fights with memes and mud? Vel looked at the rotating image of Earth, now marked with a flashing red quarantine symbol. We do not apologize to the warriors. We apologize to the translators. We find the ones who understand meaning, and we hope they are merciful. For if they are not, and they ever build starships. He left the thought unfinished. The deep stone unease was now a permanent part of him. The galaxy had just been put on notice. There was a new kind of creature in the cosmic jungle, and it was infinitely more dangerous than anyone had dreamed. It was not a predator. It was the jungle itself. The change in the sky was the first sign. The Thraxian warships, which had hung like dark, threatening moons, began to move. They were not descending. They were pulling back, gathering their smaller shuttles in a frantic, clumsy retrieval. The constant hum of their jamming signals faded, replaced by an eerie, staticky silence. Then, a new message broadcast on all frequencies, clean and clear. People of Earth, this is the Galactic Council. We transmit under a flag of truce. All Thraxian forces are ordered to cease hostilities and withdraw. A diplomatic envoy is approaching your planet. We wish to speak. In his apartment, Jinwu watched the message on a restored news feed. He felt no victory, only a sharp focus. The game had changed levels. He checked his maps. The Thraxian withdrawal patterns were hurried, full of holes. They were leaving behind equipment, stranded patrols. It was a rout, not a retreat. He typed a final message into the network. Let them go. Do not harass the retreat. Watch them. Record everything. Their fear is more useful to us now than their broken shuttles. In the operations bunker, Haijin received confirmation that the ground vibrations had stopped. The Thraxians were no longer trying to dig their walkers out. They were abandoning them. She looked at the schematics of a captured walker, its systems now fried by Timon's data pulses, and Haijin's corrosive atmosphere. Have engineering teams secure the abandoned tech, she said calmly. But do not touch it directly. Assume it is still hazardous. We will study it later, on our terms. In his basement, Timon saw the alien comms channels go quiet, then fill with a new, formal Protocol Council diplomatic codes. He didn't try to break them. Instead, he archived everything. He then sent one last gift to the departing Thraxian ships. It was a data packet containing a highlight reel. It showed their shuttles getting stuck, their warriors slipping in mud, their lasers hitting empty fields. Set to upbeat music. The title, translated helpfully into Thraxian glyphs, read, Visit Earth. A learning experience. He attached a copy of Yuna's report, Conceptual Breakdown, as a footnote. Let them know they were understood. Let them know it was worse than they thought. The council vessel was a small, elegant ship, shaped like a smooth pebble. It was unarmed. It landed where the first Thraxian shuttle had bogged down the Guangguaman Plaza. The ground was still scarred, littered with the debris of a failed invasion. A ramp extended. Counselor Vel walked down alone. He wore no armor, only a simple robe. The Kelthari felt the gravity, the wetness of the air, the strange chemical tang. He saw the windows of the tall buildings. In every one, he knew he was being watched. Not by soldiers, but by citizens. By the planet itself, a small group of humans approached. There were no generals in grand uniforms. There was Yuna Choi, dressed in a neat professional suit, a small translation device in her ear. Beside her stood Jin Wu, looking more like a tired student than a strategist. Haijin was there, her posture that of an engineer assessing a new site. Tiemann lingered slightly behind, a tablet in his hands, still monitoring the digital space around them. Vel bowed his head, a universal gesture. I am Counselor Vel of the Kelthari, representing the Galactic Council. I come to offer the formal apologies of my government. The annexation of your world was a grave error, based on a profound misunderstanding. Yuna stepped forward. She did not smile. Her face was polite, neutral. I am Yuna Choi. We have received your message. We have observed the withdrawal of Thraxian forces. The Galactic Council's recognition of its error is noted. Her tone was careful. It was not forgiveness. It was an acknowledgement. Vel felt the depth of it. These were not a people who celebrated. They were a people who evaluated. The Thraxian hegemony has been censured, Vel continued. Your planet will be listed as a protected species under Council law. You will be granted the time and space to develop without external interference. He offered this as the great gift it was meant to be. Jinwoo spoke then, his voice quiet but clear. Protected from who? From you? Vel met his gaze. From any who would make the same mistake. Haijin looked past Vel at the abandoned Thraxian walker, half sunk in the plaza. Your technology is interesting, but it seems fragile. It does not adapt well to new environments. Vel understood the message. Your protection is not needed. Your technology is not inherently superior. It was a stunning thing to hear from a Kree-FTL species. Tiemann spoke without looking up from his tablet. Your diplomatic codes are clean. The withdrawal is messy. You've left behind 17 active data nodes in your ship's subsystems. I've isolated them. Would you like the access keys back, or should we just keep them? A cold shock went through Vel. They had not only repelled the invasion, they were already dissecting its digital corpse. And they were politely offering him the scraps. Yuna stepped in, her voice smooth. What Counselor Kim is trying to say is that Earth is open to dialogue. But our concept of protection may differ from yours. We are more interested in exchange, information, cultural understanding. She paused. On equal terms. Equal terms. With a species that had just dismantled the galactic invasion using construction equipment and internet memes. Vel felt the shift in power, subtle but absolute. They were not asking for a seat at the table. They were asking to build a new table. That can be arranged, Vel said carefully. The Council would be eager to learn more about your people, your history, your unique, adaptive qualities. Jinwoo finally allowed a small, knowing smile. Our history is mostly about solving problems. Usually problems we made for ourselves. You just presented us with a new one. We solved it. He shrugged. We're already working on the next one. What is the next one? Vel asked, almost afraid of the answer. Haijin answered. Cleaning up, studying what you left behind, and discussing as a planet what happens if someone else comes knocking. We have many ideas. They are varied. The unspoken threat hung in the air, more potent than any weapon. Earth was not unified. A unified Earth, deciding on a single course of action, was a thought more terrifying than the chaotic defense they had just witnessed. Vel bowed again, deeper this time. The Galactic Council looks forward to peaceful exchange. We will transmit all necessary protocols. The mistakes of the past will not be repeated. As he turned to leave, Yuna spoke one last time. Counselor Vel, a question. The report you received, conceptual breakdown. Did you find it accurate? Vel stopped. He looked at this small group of humans, the translator, the gamer, the engineer, the hacker. He saw the eyes of the city upon them. He felt the weight of the living, breathing, furious planet beneath his feet. It was, he said, his voice gravelly with truth, terrifyingly accurate. We did not invade a world. We disturbed an ecosystem. We will not make that mistake again. He boarded his ship. The humans watched it lift off, a silent, graceful thing against the bruised soul sky. When it was gone, Tienan let out a low whistle. Their network security is actually pretty good for a static system. Jingwu looked at the sky where the Thraxian armada was now just a cluster of distant stars, fleeing. They play by rules. We play to win. Haijin was already looking at her phone at a message from a cleanup crew. We need to decide what to do the leftover walker. The museum is asking for it. So is the military. So is a scrap metal company. Yuna smiled, a real one this time. See? A new problem. We'll solve it. She looked at the others. Together, messily, they walked away from the plaza, 4 ordinary people in an extraordinary moment. Above them, Earth turned, blue and white and green, its chaotic, vibrant, relentless life unchanged. It was not a safe planet. It was not a gentle one, but it was theirs. And the galaxy, for the first time, had received a formal notice. Knocking was permitted. But invasion? That would be a very, very bad idea. The Council knew it. Soon, everyone would.